So today's agenda, we're running through the technicalities of PPSR. So this is a revision of a previous webinar that we did run back in April. Unfortunately, we had some technical issues at the time. I have updated a lot of the information in the webinar itself, so hopefully there's some more insights into PPSR itself and some of the data around PPSR. A little bit about today's presentation. There is the ability to obviously ask any questions you may have around the information in the webinar itself. The slides and webinars recording will be available to you. Today's session will run for about 30 to 40 minutes. And as I said, please feel free to ask any questions that you do have at the time during the webinar itself, but even afterwards, please feel free to submit your questions. Today's agenda, I'll run through a little bit about CreditorWatch itself, provide you with some statistics and insights into the PPSR, a little bit of feedback and insight into PPSR logic itself. We'll go through some of the technicalities around entity types and registering those entity types on the PPSR. Also look at why we actually register on the PPSR itself, and then talk about how PPSR logic can improve your registration process and prevent some common errors that occur. And of course, I'll demonstrate PPSR logic and then go through some of the common questions I do get on PPSR itself. So a little bit about CreditorWatch. We're Australia's leading commercial credit bureau with over 50,000 customers. As many of you will know, our main products or our core products are around credit reporting and monitoring your existing database. So really getting an understanding of not just new customers when you onboard them, but also customers during the life cycle of their relationship with you, making sure that they're still a good credit risk and being alerted to any possible bad credit risks as well. DebtorLogic Plus is our receivables analysis and trade program. Bankruptcy Plus, it's a very good product there, which provides you with a lot of information around potential bankruptcies for individuals and directors of companies. Apply Easy is our online credit application and automated decisioning tool. And of course, PPSR Logic, which is one of the newer products in our suite, dedicated specifically to PPSR. So just some statistics and insight into PPSR itself. There was almost 10 million searches of the PPSR in 2018, and that included the REVS and NEVTIS checks on vehicles, searches of ACNs and ABNs to look at encumbrances or security interests between businesses and companies. There were over 2 million new registrations in 2018. And what I found interesting, certainly looking at statistics recently, is that there's, I think we're going to exceed that number well and truly in 2019. In the June quarter alone, there was 518,000 new registrations. Currently, there are well over 10 million registrations on the PPSR. The two most common registration types, motor vehicles, which is not surprising. Anyone who obtains a personal loan from a bank will have a PPSR against them on that vehicle, and other goods, which is the generic registration type or most common registration type for trade credit relationships. Commercial property registrations do make up well over 7.5 million of those 10 million registrations. So a bit of information or insights we've had into PPSR logic. What we found is that a lot of users have given us the feedback that it takes significantly less time to register security interest using PPSR logic compared to the government website. And I'll run through basically a demonstration of comparing like for like PPSR logic system versus the government website. It is as well, it's quite a cost-effective time management tool. You have all of your data in one place around registrations and templates. One of our customers is saving about 20 minutes per application, and the registration itself is taking less than a minute. We do have a case study within the system there. So feel free to jump in and have a look at that when the slides and webinar is provided publicly. So a bit of information, or what I'll go through next, is some of the technicalities of entity types when you're registering those security interests against them and dealing with them, and some insight as to the type of data you should collect on those entities when you are onboarding those entity types. So I guess first and foremost, really when it comes to PPSR, it's all about getting your data correct and using the most correct identifier when registering those entities on the PPSR. When it comes to sole traders, rather than using their ABN, you actually use their full name and date of birth as it appears on a government issued document, so a driver's license or a passport. Partnerships, even though it may be multiple individuals, you still do use the ABN of that partnership. You can still obviously register against the individual's full name and date of birth, but the regulations of the PPSR state that you use the ABN itself. Now, companies and incorporated and unincorporated associations, I'll go through them in a bit more detail. For companies, it's actually quite straightforward. You do use their Australian company number, not the ABN of that entity. So the good thing about PPSR logic is we will tell you if there's an ACN present for any of those entities where you search on an ABN. But for other associations or entities that are identified by different identifiers, so managed investment schemes or registered Australian bodies and foreign companies, you do need to use that relevant identifier. So if they do have an ARSN, you certainly use that to register. If they have an ARBN, then you'll be using that as the identifier as well. When it comes to ARBNs, if they're actually or a registered body or foreign company, if they don't have an ARBN, then you'd certainly look to use the ACN of that entity as well. Question I do get asked quite a bit is, what do I do when I'm registering on a trust, and what identifiers do I use? What information do I need? There's been a recent case in the Supreme Court, which is the One Steel case, which again, most people out there will know, was all around PPSR or security interests where the wrong identifier was used to register that security interest. So an ABN was used rather than an ACN, and it was found that the registration was invalid, and in fact it was a misleading defect. When it comes to registering against entities, it really is important that you do your due diligence and make sure you get that detail right. If in doubt, the great thing with CreditorWatch is you can always jump into the customer's credit report, have a look at that ABR data to make sure you've got the right entity type before you go ahead and actually register. So really, the question next is why register on the PPSR itself, and we've listed a whole lot of reasons there. Basically, the prime reason is if you're providing any sort of good service to your customers and providing it on credit terms, you should be registering that security interest on the PPSR. Specifically, if you are supplying goods on retention of title, you do want to ensure that if any of your customers go into administration, you're able to enforce that retention of title, or at the very least have a proceeds claim if your goods have been sold. In addition to that, if you are registering a general security interest, you're listed as a secured creditor, you have rights with the administrator which are enforceable. For the sake of $10 cost to register with CreditorWatch, you get all of that information and get that access, which you ordinarily wouldn't get if you hadn't registered and are an unsecured creditor. So does this apply to me? Yep, absolutely. As I went through before, if you do have those retention of title clause or removal clause, it's not going to protect you. just having that in your contract, you do need to actually register that retention of title on the PPSR. As I said before as well, if you are providing a physical good or stock to customers to on-sell, and you're not registering that security interest, you are an unsecured creditor in an insolvency event, and highly likely that you actually won't recover anything in the eyes of the administrator. Again, when it comes to enforcing retention of title, there are time limits around when you need to register that on the PPSR. So ordinarily, if you're providing inventory to a customer and you're registering that retention of title, you do need to ensure that you're actually registering that, ideally before your stock even leaves your warehouse as such. With any other type of registration, I'd still recommend to register as early as possible, as it makes sure you're higher up the chain in terms of registrations, and you've got that access to the administrator as well. So PPSR logic, it really does fill quite a few gaps that we've seen in the market around PPSR. You can make the registration process quite easy, not just for yourselves, but if you do have staff that may be performing the registration process on your behalf, you can be quite confident they'll be able to register without any potential errors in the registrations through our template process, and also being able to do it directly from a credit report. As I mentioned before, doing it through a credit report, it's quite a simple two-click process, or one click to navigate to the PPSR and then to register from there. With our service as well, you can upload bulk registrations. You can amend registrations in bulk, so you don't necessarily have to start each individual registration from scratch. I'll run through the Apply Easy integration as well, but again, it makes it quite easy for you to register directly from a new customer coming on board, and prevents you from inputting incorrect information or missing details with your registration as well. With PPSR logic, one of our big benefits is that you get to see all of your existing registrations in one place, and you receive alerts on registrations that are coming up for expiry. More importantly, if you are registering and have a large number of registrations in place, you will have the ability to see any potential duplicates, so you're not going to be incurring unnecessary costs that you might otherwise have done so. So now I'll jump in and run through PPSR logic, just a short demonstration of the system itself, also how it integrates with CreditorWatch, and also Apply Easy. So what you'll see in front of you here is the PPSR logic dashboard. What we've done, and this is our demonstration site, is created a secured party group. Underneath that secured party group, we have templates that we can set up and customize for each customer depending on their registration requirements. And from there, with those templates, you can create single registrations or bulk registrations as well. I'll run through that bulk registration process in a little bit, but firstly, I did want to show you what it looks like to have all of your registrations in one place. So for a lot of you that have been registering in the past, you'll remember that you'll need to have your registration number and the token to actually retrieve any of your registration data and make any amendments or discharge or extend your registration. With our service, we've captured all of that information in the system, so any amendments or retrieving verification statements or extending registrations or discharging, it's all live, ready to go at your fingertips. So you can click into the registrations themselves, view the data on the registration itself, so you can see who your grantors are, the type of registration information you have there. If we jump back out, you can then, as I said, retrieve the verification statement, amend the registration, extend it, or discharge. With these registrations as well, we do provide alerts on the registration. So if you have any registrations that are coming up for expiry, you'll see, or you'll actually receive email alerts from CreditorWatch telling you that these registrations are due to expire. These registrations will also change colour. So a month out from registration expiring, they'll change colour to green. 2 weeks out from expiry, they'll change colour to yellow, and then the week that they're due to expire, they'll change colour to red. Of course, once a registration has expired, unfortunately it's lost in the eyes of the PPSR, so it's important that you do take action on any potential expiring registrations before they do come up for expiry. With our templates, as I mentioned before, you have the ability to bulk create registrations. So if I just jump in to show you what that looks like, this process is quite different to how some of the other providers of PPSR service may access bulk registrations. You have your template information there, and all you have to actually do is copy and paste in ACNs or ABNs, and you can do that directly from an Excel file or a CSV file. Jumping back into the dashboard itself, you have the ability to search PPSR based on serial numbers or by grantor. And you can also be alerted or set up alert lists to be notified of anyone actually registering against any customer or ACN of yours that you've also registered against. So that can be quite handy in terms of invoice finance companies that may register against you, or any potential changes to new registrations that are coming on board against your customers. What I'll do now is jump in and show you the link with CreditorWatch itself. So show you how these templates actually interact with a credit file and how you can create a registration directly from there. So here you have your dashboard of CreditorWatch. If you select a credit file, on the right-hand side, you have a number of different options with the credit report itself, or the entity. If you click on Create PPSR Registration, you'll see there's a number of different templates that are set up on my demonstration login. Click the relevant template, and then all you have to do is jump in and add who you're registering against. So just copy and paste that number into there. And if you're registering against multiple grantors, you can add those individuals or organisations as you go. Once that registration is complete, it will automatically populate back in PPSR Logic in your list of registrations. When it comes to Apply Easy, and I'm sure most of you know the Apply Easy program, again, looking at applications as they come on board, if you're happy with the application information that's in there, you just have to go through and click Approve. You can choose to add in your credit limit, the relevant account ID, click Approve. You can choose to send your approval email. And then last step of all is to create a PPSR registration. So again, looking at the relevant templates, you can select the most relevant one, or if you'd like to do multiple registrations against an entity, you can select multiple templates. The good thing about Apply Easy is the ACN information or ABN information is already listed in the system, so you don't have to enter in those details, and you can lastly go ahead and click Submit Registration. Again, as with CreditorWatch, once you've completed that registration, the registration data will automatically populate in your list of registrations. So some of the, just jumping back into the webinar itself, some of the common questions I get around PPSR is really around the notification that customers or registering entities are required to give of their customers. Under the regulations of PPSR, you are required to notify a customer when you register against them. Some entities do include waivers in their T's and C's around the requirement to notify, but ordinarily you do have an obligation to notify your customer if you register against them. When should I register the security interest? Again, I mentioned this before. It's always important to register as early as you possibly can. So again, if you're providing a physical good or stock to customers to on-sell, you should be doing that before the stock leaves your warehouse or your site. Finally, what's the difference between a PMSI and an AllPAP, or a PMSI and an AllPAP? The purchase money security interest is really focusing on your retention of title and getting that super priority on the register. So it's you supplying a physical good to your customer that you're holding title on, and you're providing that property on credit terms. An AllPAP, or all present and after acquired property registration, is essentially a general security interest where you're not necessarily providing a physical good to a customer, but you do have an invoice of dollar value outstanding with that customer that you're looking to protect. Given that we're quite short on time, I won't run through the poll questions, but if you do want to get in contact with me in relation to PPSR Logic or PPSR in general, there will be some contact information on the website itself, and of course my contact details will be at the end of the presentation as well. So PPSR resources for you, and again, these are available on the CreditorWatch website. We did previously run a very informative session with our guest contributor, Terry Ledland. Those webinars are available on the website, so if you do have any questions or want some more detailed information around PPSR Logic, you can jump into the system and view those at any time. We also have a number of case studies and articles on the website as well, so please feel free to jump in and grab those when you can. Just a bit of information on what's next in our webinar series. Our upcoming webinar is all around identifying illegal Phoenix activity. You'll be able to register for that shortly. It's not currently accepting registrations at the moment. That will be up quite shortly. As I said before, all of the resources from today's webinar will be available, so I'll have those up on the website as soon as possible. And of course, you can always get in contact with us at webinars at CreditorWatch or admin@CreditorWatch as well. Now, I do believe there has been a couple of questions, so we do have a couple of minutes spare, so I'll just jump in and grab those whilst we're here. So one of the questions that we had was around how long a registration lasts for. Really good question. The way in which PPSR works is you actually stipulate how long you want to register your customer or security interest for. So the common timeframes are a minimum of 7 years, or you can register for 7 to 25 years, or you can have an indefinite registration. And the pricing for registrations is all based around how long you actually want to register for. So we've had another question around how much information is needed in terms of the description of the security interest. And again, that's a really good question. I can go into a lot of detail around the description that you need, but what I like to think of it is when speaking to customers about the description of a security interest is think of the PPSR as a notice board of your security interest to the administrator. So when you actually create the registration, it's not at that time that you're actually proving what your security interest is. It's only when your client goes into administration and you're dealing with the administrator itself that you need to prove at that time. Of course, you need to get the registration details correct when you're first doing it, but you can be quite general in your description of your collateral or your property that you're providing. I'm happy to go into a bit more detail with you directly, some answer on that, if you'd like to be in contact with me. Another question we had is around how do you register retention of title? Is it available to all businesses? Registering your retention of title, obviously the most important thing is you do need to have the relevant terms and conditions set up in your credit applications or client applications. If you do that, registering a retention of title is done in the registration process, and there are specific steps that you go through to complete that process. Obviously, again, it's something I can help you out with directly as well. Now, I do realise we are short on time, so I might leave the questions there for today, but If you have asked a question, I will definitely get in contact with you and answer those as they come through, hopefully within the next 24 to 36 hours. I hope you did get something valuable out of today's webinar. As I said, if you do have any questions going forward, please feel free to contact me directly. Otherwise, happy to speak to any of you around PPSR Logic and setting you up with access. Once again, thank you very much for your time today.